My name is Owen Conlan. I'm a professor of computer science here in Trinity College. My background has been in personalisation for about the last 20 years. And that's been focusing on a variety of different areas. But one of my key focuses at the moment is on disinformation. Disinformation is a really big societal challenge at the moment. It's influencing individual thought around things like vaccines, interaction with different members of the kind of public sphere, but also very kind of importantly around elections and things that impact our societies. And my focus is generally quite technical in that. So how do we have interventions with digital agents that will respond to what people are being exposed to and offer them alternative narratives to see that there's a broader perspective on that information.
My name is Brendan Spillane. I'm an assistant professor out in University College Dublin in the School of Information and Communication Studies and a fundus investigator here in ADAPT. My research is always looking at the human factors and essentially why do humans believe information, why do they accept it, why do they reject it. And so I was always interested in disinformation, and especially from a security point of view or civil security for society. My particular interest in the projects that we're involved in kind of looks at the social drivers, the behavioural dynamics, the human characteristics that might make them accept a piece of information or reject it, which is important because it also kind of informs the technical development. But it also shows, or is to help our partners that we work with develop an understanding of the phenomena from a theoretical point of view.
I'm Eva Power. I'm in the ADAPT Centre in Trinity College Dublin, and I'm the project manager of Vigilant. So that's a project that looks at looking at disinformation that leads to crime and building a tool or a dashboard that the police authorities can use so they'll be able to assess what disinformation is circulating and that it leads to criminal activity.
So the novelty in our research comes from actually the catchphrase for ADAPT, which is engaging content, engaging people. And when it comes to disinformation, we have to kind of turn that around and realise that the disinformation that's out there, so the things that fall into people's Instagram feeds and Facebook, into just the snippets that they might read on different websites, things friends are posting in channels like Telegram and WhatsApp, it's hitting people all the time. And it is designed to be engaging. It triggers people on emotional levels. It has very catchy titles, very evocative memes and other aspects. So it's hitting people in a variety of different modes, and it's really quite challenging. So the novelty for us is how do you tackle that at a variety of different levels? So at the individual level, how do we intervene to offer a context and a perspective around challenging content? And that becomes really hard when you have to understand that people come with complex belief systems, whether religious beliefs, political beliefs, beliefs in the role of government, and you have to find a way to give an additional context. So if there's a personal level, there's then this societal level, and Eva mentioned that we engage a lot with police authorities. So at what point does disinformation become a societal challenge immediately that might propagate and lead to riots? And then we also tackle it at a policy level. So how do we equip policymakers with the information that they need? So I suppose our unique element is how do we bring AI and a deep understanding of the social drivers that underpin all of this to tackle this inherently multidisciplinary problem?
I suppose the other thing that is interesting coming from a centre is that it's not just us trying to tackle this problem. We have PhD students, postdocs, each taking a slightly different angle. So we've postdocs who are working on persuasive features of language. We have other postdocs who are working on large language models and how they're used to generate this. Postdocs working on the personalisation and PhD students working on the personalisation aspect. But also we're part of European projects, which bring in experts from across Europe.
We have to bear in mind that a lot of the projects are EU based, so all our partners are spread across Europe. So you're also dealing with a lot of different cultures, a lot of different people, and it can be difficult to establish that rapport when you are primarily based online. So as Brendan mentioned, there's over 80 partners or team members involved in the Vigilant project. There's 17 different partners themselves. And so there is a lot of sort of managing a big group of people and also making sure that everyone's voice is heard. We do have to make sure that, who's our end user? Like, is this going to be practically made for them? So we're very conscious of that. Also our ethicists and our social drivers, the social scientists as well. They're the people who are determining what are the drivers that are growing this field of disinformation and what's coming next, and at what point do things go from sort of simmering along to suddenly going into the red, and at what point do the police authorities actually need to intervene, be it for the case in point like the Dublin riots last year. It's all bubbling up across Europe, and it's to be more proactive rather than reactive to the conditions.
There's several different ways that this work is having impact out there in society. I think the first is around information and training. So we do a lot of work with schools, with teacher training organizations to ensure that disinformation becomes a known quantity in our school system, so that children in the classroom are discussing this as a complex societal topic, understanding the implications of it. In fact, there's some really good online games to allow kids to understand what happens when you start to twist and shape information for certain purposes. How can you generate kind of a momentum behind something that actually has no substance, but people get kind of caught up in it? So education public engagement, I think, is one of our key ways to bring this out there. And the nice thing is we can bring the tools that we've developed. So for example, in the Provenance Research Project, we had very targeted, individualized interventions around certain disinformation, and being able to show teachers that kind of tool and illustrate the role that media literacy plays in understanding your interaction with any information online or in the physical world. I mean, a friend could walk up to you and say, blah, 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 and you kind of go, is that real? And it's to equip people with those individual tools, not just the technological side, because that's not going to be with you all the time. So for us, I think the public engagement side is very important.
Our expertise in these subjects, or our day-to-day work in these projects, and the research that we do both individually and, let's say, within our smaller teams and our PhD students and postdocs, kind of gives us a unique insight and depth of knowledge to be able to provide advice to policymakers, both in Ireland and across Europe, other stakeholders, other European projects, even if it's something that's in an aligned domain, like a cybersecurity expert who might want some updates about things like disinformation, because it's now being used as a service. We are able to provide that part of us, which is quite rewarding as well, because often academia can sometimes be a bit, you're tucked away and you're doing things which can be for, let's say, a smaller community, but actually having a chance that your research can impact a much wider group or be seen across society can be quite rewarding. The other thing as well is that while lots of our projects as well do tend to have a very practical nature in many cases, so they tend to have end users, which can be important. And I mean, in the obvious sense of things, we've got end users which are police authorities for some of our technology, but also there's a public-facing part of it with some of our other projects, and then there's more of a European policy part of it to look at whether or not there is foreign information manipulation, interference, or FEMI impacting. So yeah, we've got both an end user part of us, a policy part of us, other stakeholders and projects. People seek out what we're doing to try and get our expertise and impulse.
We also would be quite conscious as well in the projects that there's a sustainable plan for them. Like a lot of the, let's say, European projects, they'll have a start and a date and an end date. So what we're quite actively pursuing is a sustainable pathway for it, so it continues, so it doesn't just sit on the shelf then after it's done. So we'd be looking at commercialization in terms of, we'd be working with the Adapt Centre. They have a team that can help drive that, but also national bodies as well. So let's say the likes of Enterprise Ireland can be good, a really good resource and support as well, so that the work that's been done doesn't just dry up after the 3 years, and that it actually gets utilised practically on a practical level, where it essentially does what the police authorities needed to do.
So I think we're progressing in a number of different avenues. For me, the most important one is developing really talented researchers in this space, people who are coming from masters and doctoral backgrounds, developing a deep understanding of this topic, and they'll be able to carry that forward in their careers and to continuously tackle this complex problem. But more than that, it's also to bring it into our teaching activities at postgraduate and undergraduate levels, to ensure that students from our different institutions go out into the world with an awareness of this.
We're lucky that in our projects, and just within the centre as well, we've got an element of horizon scanning. So there's the challenges that we're facing today in terms of election interference and disinformation from Russia, from China, for tackling certain issues, whether it's the war in Ukraine or whether or not it's still got to do with pandemics. But what's coming up next? So we're now proposing research and assessing the agenda as well within our proposals for what's going to be happening in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time and longer.